Humanity, fearless. There are 4 species counted among the war chamber of the Greater Galactic Council. The massive Cthulhu, Titan-like in size and strength, each individual Cthulhu capable of carrying a tank's worth of weaponry and armor into battle alone. The predatory Tragnar, apex warriors and masters of the hunt, who could track a scent for miles and lunge at their prey with a brutal fury and savage efficiency. The scholarly Delnaga, religious engineers who developed weapons of such potency that the greatest of their creations could shatter the stars themselves, had they not been bound by their faith. And then there are humans, who are none of those things. They are not the strongest, nor the quickest, nor the smartest, nor the toughest, nor the most numerically vast. A single Cthulhu could comfortably take on a platoon of Terran Union soldiers, a company of them capable of fighting a Terran tank brigade to a standstill. Tragnar warpacks practically hunted freely on isolated human outposts for fun during their war with humanity, stalking from the shadows and lunging at them with their rending claws. And while they never fought the Delnaga, reports from observers invited by the Delnaga themselves claimed to have witnessed an arsenal that made nuclear weapons, once so feared by the governments of old Earth, look like hand grenades. So why does humanity stand among these martial superpowers of the galaxy, you might ask? Many drunken nationalistic ramblers and confused casual observers have asked the same. It is for one simple reason. Humans are the only species who can fight the monsters the other 3 cannot. Space is vast and dark, holding as many wonders as it does horrors. When the black fleets of the Jark came screaming out of the sunless void of the darkness, they brought them primordial horrors, manifestations of a terrifying unreality, and monuments of a faith so eldritch it could only be described as madness. These monsters sent of psychic shockwaves, crippling the minds of those who felt it with the crushing realization of existential dread. The pride all species held in their ability to have conquered their homeworlds and expanded across the stars brought down with the terrifying realization of how insignificant they were cosmologically. And where these god avatars walked, hordes of twisted wretches, demonic abominations, and feral fanatics followed. The Cthulhu were crushed like ants, their large bodies used as empty husks for the most degenerate of Jark biocreations that stalked battlefields like distant, shambling statues forced into a torturous unlife. Tragnar hid in holes which soon became their graves, their hunting prowess meaning nothing against a foe that hunted them back with such a ruthless efficiency that just a sight of one could stun a whole warpack as they remembered a time when their pre-sentient ancestors were still hunted by other predators. And the Jark subverted the Delnaga's weapons by attacking their controllers directly, crippling them with infectious nightmares of powerlessness and of the realization that their gods had no power to protect them before harvesting their brains and knowledge for ever more sinister inventions. The Council was in disarray. The many hundreds of species and thousands of planets were thrown into chaos at the onset of a foe who fed off the heights of their pride, only to cast them down into the deepest pits of despair. No one, in their entire history of sapient civilization, had ever conceived of such a threat, one that showed how futile their struggles were and how insignificant their creations would be. All except for one. When humans first breached the barrier of FTL, they were seen as the humblest of all races. By comparison to the other species, their ships and cities lacked the huge monuments common across other planets. Boasting and bragging were seen as rude in their curious culture, and despite making it past the great filter, they kept showing themselves as the underdogs in their stories. Many governments thought it to be some kind of defeatist self-propaganda of a pacifist race, a notion only dispelled after the violence of human history was known, and the Terran Union fought the Tragnar to a standstill in a war over colonization rights. However much respect they gained, though, was never enough to outweigh the conception that they were meek, cowardly creatures, a young race who didn't believe in its own abilities enough to project them. This lack of hubris, as the humans saw it, did not come from a place of weakness, however, but from a place of understanding. An understanding that as far as they had come, they still had much to learn, and that for as much as they had to learn, the galaxy they lived in was barely a speck on the scale of the universe. Whereas the media of the other races showed them standing tall, fearless and triumphant over adversity and hardship, human media showed humans who failed to do so, overcome by a villain or greater force. Even in the situations where humans won, their path was seldom easy or smooth. To them, a 95% chance of failure wasn't certain doom, but a 5% chance of success. Uniquely among human media as well, they had developed the concept of existential horror, a concept utterly alien to the other races of the Council. They even had a word for it that could never be properly translated, Lovecraftian. What could exist that could make existence itself seem meaningless? The Zhark proved they could. Their avatars brought on a fear so ancient, so primal, that all could feel the times their ancestors were still afraid of thunder and the dark beyond meager campfires. The Cthulhu, the Tragnyar, the Delnaga. They were all new to this feeling of a fear embedded in the very DNA of life itself. Across 1,000 worlds and for nearly 27 long, bloody years, the sons and daughters of Earth fought hopeless battles and desperate last stands. Often they were the last line of defense or sacrificial rearguard, not out of choice, but because all other forces had fled the battle. Great armies were raised from humanity's many planets, colonies, and nations, her people throwing themselves into the gullets of thirsting monsters and the maws of laughing gods, all to buy time, to hold the line. The 93rd Kingsguard Infantry held a thin red line of makeshift defenses on the Cthulhu world of Octorad, refusing retreat even as they were overrun by the hordes of Zhark who torn into them. Pavalak, an invaluable industrial world, held for 3 years against a siege due to the heroic defense of the 133rd Vieja Tercia Infantry and 22nd Vostok Armored, using half-finished tanks by the end of the siege as they were overrun. The Tragnyar forever remember the 52nd Zulu Legion when they came to the aid of their desperate homeworld. It was the 86th Ular Mera and 106th Lucky Drongos who were first into the breach during the failed counterattack on the Zhark fortress on the world of Ulipiat. The 71st Chujan, 77th Chazovoy, 101st Screaming Eagles, and 166th Hei Hengfu all fought, bled, and died in the apocalyptical battle of the Delnaga Archiva world of Elliot 6. And when the 201st Aguilas Starfighter Corps discovered a Zhark Void Forge, they rammed their fighters straight into it once their ammo ran dry, desperately preventing the creation of another Cthulhu-like god avatar. As each man and woman died, they did so with fury and vengeance unseen by the wider galaxy on their lips, their souls burning like a beacon against the endless darkness. It was humanity, bleeding and battered as it was, who led the armada that crushed last bastion of the Zhark Prime. At the helm was the battleship Solar, the greatest naval vessel ever built. 5 miles long with Cthulhu armor, Tragnyar sensor arrays, and Delnaga guns, Battleship Solar led a combined force of over 24 species to the very gates of hell itself, where the Zhark kept their most terrible god avatars. With each pass of their ethereal weapons, ships weren't just destroyed, but erased from reality itself. Some fled, others retreated to maximum weapon range. Only the ships of the Terran Navy dared to get close, to stare the abyss in the eye and dare it to blink. And as they detonated a human Delnaga hybrid bomb above the Zhark's homeworld, the abyss blinked. Humanity is not the strongest, nor the quickest, nor the smartest, nor the toughest, nor the most numerically vast. But they don't have to be. They never saw themselves based on what they did, but what they could do. Where everyone else had seen near certain defeat and damnation, humans bet everything on that tiniest of chances for victory, gambling against hope and forgotten gods on an underdog victory. It had been humans, the cowards, who sacrificed untold millions on planets not their own. It had been humans, the unassuming, who lead the great galactic armada to Zark Prime. It had been humans, the prideless, who continues to hunt the remaining god avatars and monsters left over from the Zark to this day. It had been humans, the humble, who had cancelled the apocalypse. It is humans, the fearless, who stand as the galaxy's monster hunters. When some new horror or monster rises out of the abyss of space, or an old one dares to reveal its hated head, it is humanity who the Khund, the Tragnar, and the Delnaga turn to.